Hello, friends. Welcome back to O for Dying Out Loud. I've been thinking about renaming this podcast something like Matters of Life and Death, or something like that. Because that's what we're
Fun.
talking about, folks. We're talking about all kinds of spiritual goodness that benefits our life, gives us a sacred life and a sacred death, and everything in between. And I'm your host, one of your hosts, Angie Cat. And joining me, as always, is my BFF, Laura Shaw. How you doing, Laura?
I'm amazing. I'm so glad to have you back.
Me too. Yeah, I had a really good vacation, a much needed vacation. And let me just say, I could stay on vacation. That would not be a problem for me. Um, but yeah, that's something I kind of wanted to talk about tonight a little bit because so the plan was to go home to my beloved Black Hills of South Dakota, and my parents still live there, and visit them and do some hiking and biking and all kinds of fun stuff, which is what I did. However, 2 or 3 days before I left for my trip, I had this compulsion. Like it just felt like this really strong magnetic pull that said, oh, you need to make a stop, do a side quest and go visit my grandparents' grave, which is on the way. They live in a town on the way to the Black Hills. And little backstory, I was not able to go to either one of their funerals because my grandmother passed. I was walking out the house with my clothes to go to the funeral and rolled my ankle so hard that I thought I broke it. And it happened to be my driving foot. So couldn't go. And I was bummed about that. And then when my grandfather passed many years later, there was a snowstorm, a blizzard that shut down the interstate. So I literally couldn't drive there.
Right.
And I always regretted that. And yet, there's family drama. And from the messages I've gotten through other mediums, and my mentor said, I don't think you were supposed to be there for them because A, they're not there, and B, there's a lot of family drama at both of those. So I took comfort in that, but then I just felt like this, oh my God, I really should do this because it wasn't just for them, it was for me. It was for me.
Mhm.
So I did. I drove out there. I bought some roses to put on the grave site. And I actually called the cemetery because I had no idea where in the cemetery they were. And I
Right.
wasn't going to call my family to ask, because nobody knew that I was going. I didn't want any of that drama. I just
Right.
wanted to go and have some one-on-one time. So I got the roses and I called the cemetery, and he was so sweet. He's like, here's the map and here's where grandma and grandpa are. And I was like, thank you very much. So I found their grave, and it was a beautiful sunny day. And it's this beautiful cemetery that overlooks the Missouri River on these
Mm.
beautiful bluffs, and these huge, gigantic, ancient oak trees
Oh,
that were standing there like sentinels at different parts of the cemetery. So I just, it was so peaceful. It was so peaceful. And I sat down in front of their grave and I just wept. I
oh,
just wept
yeah.
because of course, anytime this is part of the grieving process. My grandmother passed in 2017. My grandfather passed in 2022. So, most people will think, oh, you should be done and over your grieving. No, it doesn't work like that. It it's a wave. It's a wave. And I was surprised by it,
Yeah.
because I remembered all these memories cropped up, of course. And it dawned on me that one of the things that made it so bittersweet for me is that being at we spent all the holidays just about at my grandparents'. We were there summers, we rode on grandpa's boat on the river, and the adults would, water ski and all the things. And I just always had happy memories of being there. And it dawned on me that it was like, oh, I know why this feels so poignant. I mean, one of the reasons why it feels so poignant is because this was a place where I felt utterly adored. My grandparents adored me. I'm not ashamed to say that. I believe that they adored me. First grandchild, that kind of
Yes.
thing. Not that they didn't care for all of their grandchildren. I'm just saying that I felt adored, I felt loved, I felt safe, and I could relax and be a kid.
Mm.
And that was a huge gift. And so it was just, I just felt like I was having a little picnic. I talked to them and, I could really feel their presence and they were so happy that I was there. And funny story, my grandmother loved it when I played the piano in the dining room, the big dining room. I took piano and I played piano. And both her and my grandfather loved theater, loved music and loved theater. And her favorite song was by Stephen Sondheim, Send in the Clowns. And I would play that for her. And she'd always joke, she said, "This is what I want sang at my funeral." Is Send in the Clowns, which I always thought was, and she did too. She thought that was so hilarious and so
Mhm.
appropriate. Send in the clowns. Where are the clowns? So I pulled up the lyrics and I sang it to her because I
Oh,
was
that's
there to
beautiful.
sing for her. So of course I sobbed and sniffled through the whole thing, but it just felt like a homecoming. It
Mm.
was just lovely. And I guess I just wanted to share that story because it was a story of grief and homecoming and closure. And, I think sometimes we're afraid to go back to our loved ones' graves. And
Yeah.
yet it can be a really, and not for everybody, obviously, but for me, it was very touching, very palpable connection with them.
Mhm.
And it was the closure I needed because it was hanging on it was still hanging over me, this deep regret that I didn't make it home for their funerals. Hell, I didn't even make as much time to go and see them when they were in their later years because I was off living in different states and working and all of these things, and it made it difficult. And so this just sort of felt like a healing.
I love that.
So, yeah, it was quite lovely. I even drove past their old house.
Me
Um,
too.
I did. Here's what's funny. I know all of those streets like the back of my hand. I didn't need a map. I knew exactly where to find it. And they had sold the house to an investor, and we thought they were going to flip the house. And so I thought, it would still be renovated or something. I didn't know what to expect. And so I drove up and it was clear that somebody was living there. So they must have rented it out or something because there were some decorations and stuff, and which was a little bit of a bummer because I totally wanted to park my car and go lurking and peeking in the windows and the backyard and everything, and could not do that. I didn't want to be arrested. So
Right, right. I don't know how to get bail to you there, but
oh, right, I know exactly. Can you Venmo bail? Do they allow Venmo? I don't
Mhm.
know. So yeah, so it was a little bittersweet, but and I went to this park that we used to go to all the time as kids, right on the river that had a little beach. Um yeah, it was just really it was I just can't I don't have words really to describe it. It was just so meaningful. Um so I don't know that I have any words of wisdom from my experience to share, just that I had this experience and I would encourage people to, you know, whatever your healing process looks like, whether that's going to visit a grave site, whether that's keeping a a keepsake item from your loved ones, or doing some sort of a ritual to honor them, or even if you had a difficult experience with them, is there some way that you can ritualize and bring that to closure? So that would be my offering for my story. So
I love that story because I think um something that people sometimes dismiss is that, first of all, the wave
Mm-hmm.
of grief and
Yes.
how um many years later it could still be something that you need to do. You need to do something. And
Yeah.
so I appreciate that you did that. And also sometimes it takes you off guard.
Yeah.
Sometimes we're caught off guard by the grief we feel for somebody or some place or
Mm-hmm.
something or some point in time. And um
Yeah.
love that you allowed yourself to do that. And I appreciate that you did that without telling anyone you were going to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's important. I mean, it was important for me, but I think it's important to say that, regardless of what it is in your life, whether that's part of your healing journey, your grief journey, or maybe it's even like you've got a goal for your health and wellness, you are not obligated to share your plans with anybody,
Sure.
with anybody. If that's something you want to keep close to your heart and it's your process, then keep it close to your heart,
Mhm.
and I'm glad that I did that. I mean, of course, now this is going to be out on the great wide web, but I highly doubt that my family's going to watch. Um, but nonetheless, I mean, and at some point down the road, I don't have any problem sharing that. But up until that point, and I mean to tell you, it was like they were both like hounding me a couple
Mhm.
of days before I left for my trip. Like it just felt like that. It would not let me go,
Mhm.
you know? Because there were times where I was like, no, it's not necessary. They're not there, blah, blah, blah. But it would just not let me go. So I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna adjust my hotel reservations and I'm gonna stay a night over here, and yeah, it was really because here's the other thing that I think was interesting that came out of it is that, and this happens to me every time I go home to South Dakota. I love that state.
Mhm.
Probably because I have traveled its roads hundreds of thousands of times.
Right.
There is something very special about that state to me. And every time I go back to visit, it feels like a homecoming. And they say you can't really go home, right? Things change, and they do. They absolutely do. Lots of things have changed. The old grocery store that we used to go to when I was a kid and my grandmother would take me had changed names, but I remember the old name and I loved it. It was called the Red Owl. And so, things change. And so it's always this weird mix of, or I should say, a beautiful mix of bittersweetness is that there's so many things I love about this state, the scenery, the landscape, all the memories that I have of being there, and then to watch it change over time.
Right.
Um, it sort of creates this little ache in my heart. While it's fed by being there, there's also a piece of me that's it's almost like watching a death in a
Mhm.
way,
Mhm.
because you're watching the death of, or any kind of change can be a death, right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
so
It's
when
an
I
ending.
look at What's that?
It's an ending.
It's an
It's an
ending.
ending. Yeah.
It's an
Just like
ending.
that.
It's a transition. It's morphing into something
Mhm.
different. And so there is a little grief in that,
Mhm.
like there's grief when I go up to the Black Hills and I see how much tourism has changed that landscape, and it's heartbreaking. And yet
Right.
there's still plenty of wonderful places to go where I can soak up Mother Nature's love and really love that. But it's changed,
Right.
and there's no getting around that. And so it's sort of a metaphor for the rest of life that we can't slow down aging. We cannot stop change from happening.
Right.
It's going to happen. And so I think not only does it catch us off guard, but it's somewhat expected when, we grieve the loss of loved ones,
Mhm.
but it absolutely catches us off guard when other changes happen in our lives as we get older. And
Yeah.
we are like, what is this feeling? It's like, why am I feeling grief around this? It's like, because grief is a natural emotion
Mhm.
around that, but we don't talk about that.
Right. Right. Yeah,
So,
we've definitely talked a little bit together about like the grief of youth or the grief of
mhm,
many of the things that but I, I think it's absolutely critical that we all give ourselves the time and space and meet grief where it finds us.
mhm,
Because definitely it I remember when my oldest my high school sweetheart, we had a child together. I was very young. And then we hadn't spoken in, I don't know, 25 years, 20 years. And when he passed a couple of years ago, I just remember that grief hit me in a way I was not expecting. I mean,
mhm.
this is someone I hadn't spoken to. This is someone I didn't really have a relationship with
Right.
anymore. However, the
Mhm.
grief of him not being on this earthly plane at this time, and also the kind of finality of the times that we
Mhm.
had, or and I, to your point, I definitely drove a lot of back roads and remembered a lot of things that we had done, and ridiculous memories and stories, and was but I was caught off guard by that grief. And sometimes we just have to meet grief where it finds us, and just accept
Yeah.
it and let ourselves be sad. So
Yeah.
mhm,
Because, everything leaves an indelible mark
yeah.
upon us, right? Every person, every situation, every experience, however big or small,
Mhm,
we're surprised to find that it is a little bit of it's a tattoo on our heart,
right.
and I mean, if you really want to go down the rabbit hole of spirituality, and we look at quantum physics and the fact that time as we know it doesn't really exist. It's
Right.
like there's only the now, and there's so many multiple dimensions and
Mhm,
realities happening all at the same
right.
time. So you
Layered.
think, well, if you really truly understood that, how could you grieve? And it's like because we are human beings
Right.
having we're spiritual beings having a human
Human
experience.
experience.
That's
Mhm,
just the nature of it, is
yeah.
that we came here to experience all of it.
Mhm,
And all of it means happiness and sadness.
yeah.
And so I think that's important to give ourselves some grace. And also, here's the other thing that is just coming to me is that I think the other reason why this was coming up for me so strongly was because I was taking a vacation. I had designated time. I had time to pause in my life from my work and all my other responsibilities to be with my feelings.
Right.
Right. And,
Yeah.
so I think that's part of it too, is that, if we're not giving ourselves repeated opportunities to just pause and be with whatever is coming up,
Mhm,
that's when it turns sideways because we just go, oh, let's put this in the to do later pile. And
yes.
that to do later pile goes up to here. And
Mhm,
then you go, wow, she's just really cracked. What
right.
happened to her? It's
Right.
coming out sideways. Well, it's because hadn't taken some time to, you know,
Right, to
process.
process. Yeah, for sure. That I
Yeah.
think that that's just true. Um, one of the things that kind of strikes me is with the death or
Mhm,
even just a change in life,
mhm,
oftentimes we have a role. So,
mhm.
like maybe your role at that time was to ensure that your mother was okay, or to,
Sure.
and you couldn't be there in
Right.
the physical sense of being. And so part of it is that we kind of get, I always tell people like I am amazing at holding it all together when I have to. And
Right.
then 20 minutes after it happens and it's all done, that's when I'm about to have an epic meltdown. Like
Oh, sure.
I'm great under
Yep.
pressure. Go for it. I
Yeah.
got you. Um,
Right.
but give me a little space from that,
Right.
and I will walk out of that room and absolutely in the quiet of my own mind, later. That's when I will lose my shit. So,
You know, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Absolutely. I mean, if that's how you want to do it, and everybody's going to process it differently. I think
absolutely.
the one message that I would say in light of that is that get to know yourself well
Sure.
enough that, you know, if that doesn't feel good to you to have an epic meltdown afterwards, and you're feeling like the tide is rising, right? You know, and we're not finished with this thing yet. Get good at creating some scripts that you can use, such as I need to take a 20-minute break
Right,
for my
yeah.
mental well-being. I
Mhm.
need to take a time out. I need a quiet space, right?
Yeah,
You know, so there's lots of different ways to process it. It doesn't have to be sob all the way through it. It doesn't
right,
have to be, you know, stoic warrior. It
yes,
could be all of those and everything in between.
yeah.
But understanding, that's part of what we talk about with astrology and Enneagram and all these
Mhm.
ways to get to know yourself, is to see how you best navigate life's situations. And then the more information you have, the better you can approach those
Right,
situations.
right.
And they don't, you know, it's not that they don't catch you off guard. It's just that you understand every time a little bit better how you navigate emotions
Yeah,
and
it's
certain
the weird
situations.
idea of preparing for the unexpected.
Right.
In the budgeting world, Jen and I have this line item.
So not good at that.
I'm
So not
gonna
good.
say this very bad word, so plug your ears and don't let children hear what I'm about to say to you. So literally, we call it the fuckery line item.
Yeah.
And the reason it exists is because every month it seemed like something crazy was happening where suddenly, a kid or a pet or something just like, what? And so we just created this
You
line
need
item,
9 teeth pulled out of your
right?
cat's head?
Right?
What?
And
Poor
we just
Scott.
created this random line item. And since we've had that, we very rarely use it. But we are prepared for it though. If it
Right,
happens, it doesn't even hit us in the same way. Before it was like,
right,
well, I guess we could
right,
shift some things and now we're just ready. So
right, right.
it's not that things
Well,
don't
I have
happen. I
some.
think we don't know.
No, I think that's a great idea. And I want to talk with you offline a little bit more about what that looks like, because I have my emergency budget, but I nearly blew through that for vacation. So,
Happy
because things
vacation.
cost a little bit more than you expect they're going to
Yeah,
cost, you
yeah,
know?
yeah. And
Um,
it's just the
so,
idea of preparing for the unexpected in a way
right,
so that when these things happen,
right,
you're not, you're not trapped in this, I don't know how to respond, because you've already kind
right,
of
right.
prepared yourself
You
a little.
planned a little bit for it.
Mhm. Yeah,
And so, like to say, you can't plan for every
no,
unexpected thing. So please hear us on this.
yeah.
You can do some things to nurture yourself. You can have a toolbox at your ready
Mhm.
when things that you can pull from when the unexpected happens. But by no means are we saying you should be able to plan for every unexpected challenge, drama, chaos, and you should be
Right.
fine.
No,
No, not
no,
if you're living on planet Earth. That's not going to happen.
right.
So, but yes, I agree with you that some of the planning, I just gave myself the hiccups because I'm talking too much. Um, the planning is really more about planning your self-care,
Yes. Yeah.
right?
And allowing yourself to feel what you need to feel,
Yes,
which is
exactly,
important.
exactly.
Mhm.
Yeah, and totally. And this is going to segue into the next thing I wanted to talk about because it's super important, because tomorrow, Tuesday, September 17th, is a super new moon, excuse me, super full moon in the sign of Pisces with a lunar eclipse. Let's unpack that a little bit, because I'm a big believer in astrology, Enneagram, all the different kinds of tools that help us to understand what may be going on with us and can
Mhm.
help us to process these things. So, whether you're into astrology or not, I just want to share for those who are this could maybe explain some things,
Right.
because I don't know. I didn't get into astrology. It was very surface level when I was younger. It's like, oh, how funny. This is what my, horoscope was in the paper. And it never was really right on. But the more that you dive deeper into your astrological chart, which is a snapshot of all the planets
Right.
and what constellations they were in and what houses they were in at the time you took your first breath. So it really is uncanny how well it can explain some things. So first up, full moons. Okay. I don't need to tell hardly anybody this. You'd go talk to a nurse in an ER about full moons, and she will give you every reason why she doesn't want to be working in the ER on a full moon.
Yep.
It's heightened energy, right? It
Yes, it gets
becomes
crazy.
it gets crazy. The tides are pulled significantly on new and full moons, and we are made up of 70% water. Okay. So that's going to impact things
Yep.
emotionally for us. The moon is related to emotions. When it's a super full moon or new moon, that means that the moon is at the closest trajectory to Earth. So it energetically in its axis, it's closest to Earth. So the pull is way stronger
Okay.
than it would be if it was just kind of somewhere else in its trajectory. There's also oh shoot, I forget the name of it, but it's there's a terminology for when it's closest and for when it's furthest away. When it's furthest away, whether it's a full or new moon, it has less of an impact.
Hmm.
When it's closest, a super full moon or new moon, pay attention. So we have a super full moon. Full moon is very big energy. You can oftentimes have problems sleeping. You can feel very tired because of it, because there's a lot of energetic activity going on in the world, right? And then we have it in the sign of Pisces. Pisces is the fish. Pisces, is that your moon sign?
Mhm.
Is that? Oh, so you're going to feel this one. Yeah,
I
have you
did
been
feel
feeling
it.
it already?
Yes. Yes.
Were you like, I don't want to be even on this podcast tonight because I just can't.
I don't want to be on the planet Earth right now.
Duly noted, duly noted.
And it's okay.
Yeah. So Pisces, sorry, it's a little dry in here. Pisces is the fish, and it is the most intuitive of the signs. We think about that symbology. The fish is swimming around in the depths. So Pisces likes to feel deeply. Okay, it likes to feel emotions deeply. You may not think so, but yes, you do.
You.
You this can be a very watery, very emotional placement. You may feel very heightened intuition, intuitive insights, may have very active dreams. And so paying attention to that, because the other piece of this is that there's a lunar eclipse. So where the sun and moon are in relation to the earth means that the earth is passing between the sun and the full moon, so that it causes a eclipse of the moon. Now, eclipses are interesting energy because it's a shadow, right? It's a shadow on the moon. So when we have a super full moon and a lunar eclipse, we're being asked to look at the shadow sides. Doing shadow work during this time is really important. And what do I mean by shadow work? Well, it's really looking at how do I want to explain this? It's not the bad part of us. It's just that we all have our own shadow stuff, I have to admit that I get a little cranky and maybe a little road ragey when somebody tailgates me, right? That's kind of shadow behavior. Or if if I have a pattern in my relationships that's
Yeah.
unhealthy, right? That's shadow work. So we look at shadow work means we're looking to bring that up. The shadow is coming up for us to take a look at it And in that process of the full moon, we're also being asked to shine some light on it so that we can heal this,
Yes.
right? So the shadow side of Pisces is the fact that we can, when we go deep, right? And
Mhm.
that can be a little depressive. It can be very, I don't want to say victim mindset, but just really like despondent, right? When you know, and you're not wanting to get out of it. You're just really wanting to wallow around in the ditch.
Yeah.
Um, do you, I sense that you're getting along with this.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
that's one of the key pieces to look at during this full moon is that look at what shadows are coming up for you, what messages are coming up for you. For me, and this is really going to be, I mean, there's a definite theme, depending on, you know, for everybody,
Yeah.
but there's also depending on the rest of your natal chart and where your moon is, there's some nuances there
Mhm.
that you need to pay attention to. So, for example, for me personally, and I'm just pulling up a couple of my apps that I love. Chani Nichols, the Chani app, Chani, great app for moon astrology, for any kind of astrology. And then the Pattern is another one of my favorite. So, you know, we're feeling very sensitive. We can feel very reactive during this time, right? But the reactivity, this is the key piece. The reactivity is revealing where you need to be softer with yourself. Like if
Mm.
something's coming up that's triggering for you, that's a time to really go, oh, let me pause. What is this trying to tell me? You know, like I had pre-prepped for work. I answered a lot of my emails yesterday so that it wouldn't feel like such a crazy Monday today. And yet I had a bit of an epic meltdown when an Excel spreadsheet was not functioning the way I thought it should with formulas I wanted to put in there. And I'm like, wow, why am I reacting so much to this? It's not about the Excel spreadsheet. It's about the fact that I am deeply frustrated by the kind of work that I'm doing, and it's not as fulfilling. And that's the thing that's being called up for me is,
Mhm.
the universe is tapping me on my shoulder with my intuition going, we've been sending you signs about, you know, your next path, and we want to make sure that you're paying attention to that.
Right. Are
So it's
you
an opportunity.
aware?
What's that?
Are you aware of what it's saying to you?
I think
Mhm.
so. I think so. You and I'll have to talk offline about that because I do think that there's been some significant things that have been happening in the lead up to this. So that it's like, okay, I'm really listening. I'm really trying to pay attention. So um so this is, you know, feel your emotions, cry if you want to, having a good cathartic cry. You do not have to know why you are
Right.
crying. Just cry. You know, trust your intuition, make art, really be tender with your sensitivity and do whatever you can. You know, maybe you are going to be triggered to react a little bit. You're human just like the rest of us, but do whatever you can to um, kind of buffer that sensitivity and protect your sensitivity during this time, because the full moon, we'll feel this for several days. It's not just tomorrow. We'll feel it for the reverberation for several days after, and the eclipse season is felt for several weeks.
Oh, good.
Oh yeah.
Oh, great.
Like, fabulous.
Yeah. You know, I love it when you share these things with people, and I'm not a huge, like, I don't know all my charts. I don't know. Angie knows this about me. And what I'll say is that the more I have learned, so I've always known I'm a Pisces. Everyone knows typically, you know, your horoscope or your astrological, is that my moon sign?
I
Sun,
don't know. I think it's your moon sign. I
my
thought you
my
were a
birth.
Virgo.
My I was born in March.
Yeah. So
So I'm a
you're
Pisces.
born
I
in
don't know which
March.
is your moon and which is your sun. I
Oh
am a
my God.
Virgo on one side and I'm a Pisces because of the date I was born. I'm a Pisces. And because of that,
Well, I'm gonna look this up because this is gonna drive me absolutely
I know.
bonkers. I'm not
See, I
gonna
don't
show the screen, but you keep talking and I'm gonna pull this up and we're gonna find out.
okay. So what I was going to say is what I can tell you is that as a very, like whatever surface level knowledge person about these things, um,
Yeah,
I, I know that when I was younger, I was crazy. So anyone who knows me from when I was younger, I was
not crazy.
extremely,
Stop it.
sorry, very emotional. And
Okay.
everything was extremes for me. And really, I think what it amounted to is I didn't understand myself, but also I didn't understand anybody else at the time. But I'm also very intuitive, so I often feel other people's emotions, and I didn't recognize that until much later in my life, and learned how to work
Yeah.
with that. But one of the beautiful parts about getting older is that I eventually did
Mhm.
enough shadow work, therapy, moon circles. I
Mhm.
just did enough work that
Yeah.
I am not the person I was then because I understand. I worked on the things that, and I also understood better than I ever did. So now I look at that and I think, oh yeah, that yes, it's because I was frustrated and I didn't understand. And it's like a toddler who doesn't understand
Right.
how to
Right.
utilize what they're feeling. And
Yeah.
that's kind of what we
Yeah.
were. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good point to bring up is the fact that, if you weren't brought up with a lot of this information, you know, you may have been told that you're just too sensitive, you're
Yes.
wearing your heart on your sleeve. I heard that a lot, you're just wearing your heart on your sleeve. Don't be so sensitive.
Don't be so
And
sensitive.
mm,
Mhm.
but sensitivity is a superpower. And there's so many different personalities out there. Why
Mhm.
not learn as much as you can about the personality, whether you're using it through the lens of Enneagram or astrology or, I don't know, runes or whatever your tool is, it can help you get in tune with yourself because a lot of my teachers have said this. They're all saying the same thing. Know yourself. The
Yes.
more you know yourself, the more that you can actually cultivate compassion and understanding for other people because you realize, oh, these are some of the things, including the shadows and the things within me that I have disowned or have, criticized.
Mhm.
Once I bring that back to my heart and I go, no, this is all a part of me and it's all beautiful, then I can see that beauty in everyone
Right.
regardless of their, and it helps us. I find it helps with relationships.
Yes.
Like we use the Enneagram at work, and it's been amazing in terms of, oh, this is why these two people clash, or here's what we can do to work together. Here's
Mhm.
their strengths, here's their weaknesses. So yeah, it's really meant for that. And you can go as deep or as surface level as you want,
Yep.
you know. But I think that the more that you learn about it, it's one, I find it fun, but number two, it's uncanny how much it can help you to navigate. It doesn't mean you give up all of your control and say, like some people who use oracle cards, it's like, oh, I'm going to pull the card today and go, what am I supposed to do or know today? You're don't give up your power, your personal power. You still have self-will and
Right.
you can co-create what you want. You can co-create misery, you can co-create happiness, you can co-create challenges or you can co-create ease or all of the above, right? But the moment that we say, oh, I can't do anything unless I consult my astrological chart or I consult the cards or whatever, you're not understanding the role of these things. They're tools
Yeah.
for you to understand yourself a little bit better so you can reflect on that.
Mhm.
They're not meant to be the almighty power that you kind of submit to, if that makes sense,
Yeah.
you know? Because I could sit there and tell you, you know, it's a super full moon in Pisces, you're going to feel really sensitive and cry. And maybe you take that information and you go, no, I'm not. And you absolutely can do what you can to not experience that. You have self-will to do that. But it's not because, but do that because it's what you want to do, not because being sensitive and crying is bad. You know what I
Right,
mean?
yes.
You know, it's not, we're not trying to wipe out certain traits of people,
No.
you know? So, but yeah, so it's a big deal tomorrow. So typically around full moons, you know, if you're into moon astrology and you do moon rituals, this is a great time, whether you have or haven't, you know, it's an opportunity again to pause and check in.
Mhm.
So full moons are a great time for celebrating what you've accomplished over the last moon cycle or even over the last year. We're approaching the fall equinox, so it's a good time to do that. So celebrating what we've already accomplished, celebrating our gifts, but also gratitude and a forgiveness ceremony.
Mm.
So it's about gratitude for what has been and letting go of what no longer serves us, letting go of whatever resentments we may be holding on to. So if there's someone in your life that you may need to do some forgiveness work around, this is a prime opportunity to do that, including forgiveness of yourself.
That's a big one, folks. Big.
Big one,
Mhm.
big one.
Huge.
Gosh, every time I think, oh, I've forgiven myself, no, no, I haven't. No, not in the slightest.
Yeah.
So every full moon, we're bringing it up
Get
again.
reminded.
So, you know, meditation, getting extra sleep, particularly because most people discover that their energy, even if they're tired, their energy is just kind of on fire because
Yep.
of this moon. So, nurture yourself, folks, and you know, get some apps, find your astrological chart and see what that means for you. But just know that the thing I love most about it, whether there's astrology or not, is that I just love the magic of the cosmos. I mean,
Absolutely.
everything in it. I mean, just think about the miracle of the planets and the galaxies out there, the miracle of the plants that are sitting on my windowsill, the miracle of my cats, my beautiful cats who are ripping apart my carpet. Yes, they're so
They're punishing you
miraculous.
for being on vacation.
Right, I know, I know. You know, I mean, there's just the natural world is how Native Americans, how Native tribes, our ancestors, Celtic pagans, there's a lot of nature-based spirituality, a
Mhm.
lot of nature-based spirituality, because that's how they lived their lives, was in harmony with the natural world, and that includes the cosmos.
Right?
The Native Americans had prayers to the star nations,
Yes, of course they did.
you know?
Of course
So,
they
you know,
do, I guess I should say, because they
right.
still do.
Yes, they do. Yes. And so I think it's just important. It's just another way of honoring, stopping to honor that we are part, a little tiny part of something so vast,
Right?
so vast. And to me, that is just thrilling
Yeah.
and so fascinating.
Yeah. What a blessing. What a crazy ride life is.
Yes, absolutely wild. So we're about at time. I don't want to keep us too much longer. So we'll be back next week, folks. But just so you know, we have the fall equinox coming up
Mhm.
this week. That will be Friday or Saturday, depending on the calendar you're
Yes.
working on. It's usually the 20th or 21st. And real quick about this, fall equinox is another great time to pause because it's when the sun and moon, or excuse me, the night and day are equal.
Mhm.
But it is also marking the time where from this point forward, the night is going to grow. Our days are going to go shorter. There's so much mythology around that. We'll maybe look at that next time. But this is a great opportunity to think about what you've harvested so far this year and be celebratory about that. It's also a great time, we have spring cleaning. This could be another opportunity, fall cleaning, to clear out. It's like the farmers do. They clear out their fields, or they're getting ready to, so that it can lie fallow. What can you let go of so that you can enter into the winter in a place of really deep self-nurturance? Because this is what nature is going to be asking of us in the coming months. Many people dislike winter, but
Mm,
it can be such a powerful spiritual time, because nature is saying, oh, slow down. Slow down. Now is the time to go inward, be softer, nurture yourself a little more, do more self-reflection. It's my favorite time of year.
I love it.
So yeah, something to consider, particularly around your health and wellness practices. So be aware of those kinds of things, and we'll talk a little bit more about fall equinox next time, and how you can utilize this time as a real healing tool for your health and well-being. Okay. Anything
Mhm.
else? Last comments, Ms. Shaw?
Oh, just everybody hang on. It gets a little bumpy, it gets a little emotional. Try not to snap at everyone around you. And see your feelings for what they are, and know what's yours, and that you can carry, and what is yours to put down.
Good advice. Good advice. Yeah, you don't need to carry everybody else's stuff. So I can carry 15 bags of groceries up the stairs, because by God, I'm going to make it in one trip, but I don't need to carry everybody else's emotions. So, yeah. Well, thank you, lovely listeners, all three of you. I don't know. We may have
All
more.
important.
Yes, all of them are important. We really appreciate you listening, and we hope you're getting some juicy, good stuff to help you live a soulful life, a sacred life. And if you have other comments, please drop them below. And we look forward to seeing you in a couple weeks. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.